Hi. Good afternoon. Ah, there's a giant daddy long legs on me. Okay. So here I am. This is just, my life right now. Anyways, this is part 3. Part 3 of my story. Getting to some of the juicier bits today, and it's a little hard to talk about this part, but you know what makes it easier to talk about this part? If you make a wash. So if you're watching this, make a wash in a multiple of 12 to cash.me/$washitall, paypal.me/washitall, or to applepay and zelle. The address is laundruss@automat.me. And you can email 100f@automat.me if you want to do an asset wash, if you want to do some other kind of wash. If you have questions about washing, you can DM me. And for those of you who have never heard of washing, it's how you buy back soul. It's a way to take where you store your belief, which is in financial capital and social capital, to name a couple, and washing that belief out of the pain matrix, which is 96% pain for 4% pleasure, and washing it into the pleasure matrix, which is 4% pain for 96% pleasure. And it's how I got here. I started washing. It's a leap of faith, and it makes people real angry, so get into your feelings about it, make one, and see what happens. So when I left off, I was talking about being in Chicago at S.A.I.C, just about to finish up my sophomore year of college, and I had just found out about this artist who was an MFA student getting his graduate degree in the ceramics department at the school. And I found out about his artwork first. I saw his piece. It was one of the most popular pieces in the show. Everyone loved it. It was called The People of Aya, and it was like a giant diorama style room full of these ceramic figurines that were part of this sci-fi cult religion. And this artist was doing it as a LARP. He was not an actual cult leader, but he was, doing something. And so I found out that he, through a part of his MFA piece, was doing a walking tour in downtown Chicago in the parks that was about the people of Aya, and he was playing the cult leader. He had a whole outfit and everything, and doing a walking tour talking about the history of the people and their religion, and it was a performance piece for those of you unfortunate enough to know about performance art. So I clicked attend on Facebook at the same time that there was a S.A.I.C secret admirers page going that he had gotten a post aimed at him about, apparently. So he saw that at the same time that I said attending on his event. And he took it as I had written the secret admirers crush about him, because it was something about I love your artwork, etc. So I was not the person who did that, but he sent me a message on Facebook, and it was scrolling text, super long message, super earnest, super sincere, and not at all caring about being kind of intense and a little kooky. And that was, someone refreshing from him to someone like me, who was very, irony, black nihilism, I'm a fucking cool artist around cool hipster people, that I hated. It was someone who's being more human. I'm into it. So I was well, I didn't write that, but I'm excited to meet you too. And so we ended up meeting. He called me the day I was about to come. He's like, "Are you coming? You're my esteemed guest. I'm so excited." And little did I know that his girlfriend was there with him and had brought snacks and was, dutifully soldiering along with her crazy boyfriend. But he still was really into hanging out with me and giving me attention on this walking tour. And I was yeah, this guy that's crazy, interesting, and He's giving me this attention, and I love his art, and this is his, like, piece. I've always been a clout chaser and power hungry bitch with a sweet exterior, so I was into it. But there was something kind of weird that happened, and you know when you just, like, notice something that's off from your human instincts, you're like, this is something that feels unnatural, and your, like, spidey senses tingle. This day is the beginning of that happening to me all summer. And the way it happened was this person that was on the walking tour was someone nobody knew, and he was, like, kind of odd and asking everyone a lot of questions, like if they drank or smoked, and, like, saying, like, I'm gonna go get drunk, like, who wants to get drunk? And, like, it's kind of like the who are you, nobody knows you type vibe. And I didn't really think much of it, but I do remember feeling like, that's odd, this guy's kind of weird. And Christopher and I ended up, I don't even remember if we ended up hanging out more the rest of that day. He probably went and hung out with his girlfriend, but I need to be a little more in the sunlight here. But in any case, we did end up hanging out very soon after, and he told me that he really liked me and that he's been trying to break up with his girlfriend for a while now, and they don't love each other, etc., etc. And he was also like, and we were in downtown Chicago this second time, and in a park, in Grant Park. And he was like, he was kooky looking, and he described the process of, like, doing this downtown walking tour, what his preparations for it. And he was like, now, there's something I have to tell you that's been happening ever since I really started preparing for this walking tour and doing this People of Aya, like, sci-fi cult thing. In my, like, it's been the last few weeks, I've been noticing, like, tons of cars slowing down, looking at me in a way that no one does, and it's not normal. And I've been taking pictures of all of the different cars, so I have their license plates and have the people in case they repeat or something. And at this point I was like, you know, I'm pretty fucking down for anything, and I'm always, like, trying to be around weirdness and be like, see, I can handle anything. But even I was like, oh gosh, this guy's starting to sound like a crazy person. But I was like, okay, like, we'll just ride this out. It's fine. And so he was showing me pictures, and I was like, I don't understand what any of this means. Like, and he was like, yeah, people, like, wave at me, and I just have a really weird feeling, like, everyone's watching me. And he was like, maybe because I've been, like, making maps of downtown and walking around and looking crazy and, you know, talking about cults and stuff. And, you know, this is 2013, so people are not fucking, like, black-pilled. No one's really at the level of full, like, disclosure that we are now, where people are talking about, like, the NSA openly and the FBI and gang stalking, etc. Said the G word, so you know where this is going. But I was like, okay, whatever. And we hung out at the park, and while we were hanging out at the park, a man that looks like a business bro comes over to us. And I've lived in Chicago for 2 years now and some change, and this kind of thing had never happened in this way. The vibe, the energy. This guy comes over and he's like, hey guys, like, do you want to go smoke with me? Like, I live in one of the high rises. We could, like, totally, you know, blaze together. And we were like, no, we're kind of on a date right now, actually. Thank you, though. And he was like, oh, a date, cool, yeah, well, you know, have a good time, or whatever. And he left, and then Christopher was like, that was weird, wasn't it? And I was like, yeah, that was kind of weird. He's like, that has been happening to me nonstop. I am now under the impression that I am being followed, and by who I do not know, and weird things keep happening, and I'm trying to figure it out. So I was like, okay, whatever. My subconscious self had been cruising for military intelligence in my life in a more overt way, and here it was, you know, happening. But at the time, you know, I wasn't conscious of this, or, you know, I didn't have Temple knowledge. I didn't know how to, like, delve into what kind of subconscious desires I was making attract certain things in the universe to me or whatnot. But that week, we just went full on into a relationship. He broke up with Marissa, and we started dating, and he was 31, by the way, and I was 19, and he, he was kind of crazy looking, and people were perplexed about our union. But I was just, like, that week when we first started hanging out, I started to see what he meant about people following him, and the feeling of when you're like, okay, someone's looking at me, I'm like, this is weird. And I remember when things got really overt, and it's like the wall was broken for me, because they had been breaking the wall with him, and agents had started to even be talking to him openly. But how it happened with me was, I had my group of 3 or 4 friends. Teresa, my freshman roommate, was one of them, and we decided we were going to go to the Baha'i temple and, hang out. It was the summer now. Christopher and I were dating. I had not known what to think yet about this stuff with what he was saying was probably the FBI. He did not know. I was like, this guy's crazy. I had not been awoken to much shit at all. I was like, just, chilling out. Brought my friends to the Baha'i temple with him. We drove there. It's in the suburbs of Chicago. It's a beautiful place. And we get there, and we're sitting on the lawn before we go to the temple. And one of us, I remember, leaves, Sophie, to go into the temple and not hang out on the grounds, but the rest of us stay back. There's this red car that slows down on the drive up to us, and they just sit there and look at us. And Christopher goes over to them, and I'm just like, oh, like, he's going to talk to someone? How embarrassing. But he's talking to them, and then he's like, yeah, and he's like, come here. They'll say they are watching me. And so all of us, or maybe just me and the other friends of mine, stay back. I go over there, and it's a woman in a Russian accent, and she's like, yes, he's a good person. Like, we know he's a good person. And then he was like, but you're following me, and they just were like, hmm. And I looked in their back seat, and they had piles of clothes in their back seat, and there was one guy there were 2 other guys with the woman, I believe, too, and one of them had a bunch of camera equipment, like giant, nice, fancy camera, photo camera, and they got out of the car, and at this point, I was probably white as a sheet, because I had just had people that I thought were random strangers start to reinforce the delusion I thought that Christopher was going through. And they come out and go over to our friends, and they're like, hey, you guys, and they just start taking pictures of us like it's a photo shoot. And it's really weird. And I don't know what else Christopher is saying, but he's like, see, I'm not crazy. And my friends and I are like laughing, and because it's just surreal, and we're a bit like taken aback. We're in shock, really. And I remember specifically when the guy with the camera starts saying, now get in a line, look like you're in the military, and salute. And that's when we're like, the mood shifted, and we were like, this is not funny actually anymore, this is scary. And we were like, no. And we just walk away from them. At this point, I walk away and I look around me, and it's like the Truman Show. Someone who had their glasses, like, looks down at me and then puts their glasses up and looks away, like they want me to know that they are looking at me. And I just start to notice things that Christopher has been saying, like there are people watching me clearly. Sophie comes out of the Baha'i temple at this point because we're walking towards it. She has not witnessed any of this, mind you. She comes out and she's like, you guys, that was the weirdest experience I've ever had in there. It was like everyone was watching me, and it was really weird, so I left. And we were like, yeah, guess what just happened? We all get out of there. It's like very uncomfortable. I start crying. I'm very dramatic about it. And Christopher's still like, a little pumped because he just had 5 people get in on it and experience it. So we go back to the house that we're all staying at that point. It's like a shitty apartment in Logan Square, and my friend Leander is on the lease, but Christopher, over the next few weeks, has a bunch of crazy shit happen to him that makes him very unstable, where he needs to stay with first me, and subsequently we stay in that apartment. And the reason he's having shit fucked with and having a hard time is the surveillance, the gang stalking, for those of you unaware of the term, is intensifying, and things are happening like people breaking into his house and stealing his computer, taking it but then returning it, I believe. His apartment is compromised. It's very uncomfortable for him. His medications are fucked with at the Walgreens. He goes there and they're like, we don't see any prescriptions for you here. His money is fucked with. They actually fuck with his money, which is pretty next level. So he has a bunch of money disappear from his account. And I am such a bitch probably in hindsight, because it's taken so much for me to believe this, but I'm still having the cognitive dissonance because my reality has gone from one thing to another. And he's used to the reality going from one thing to another because he grew up Mormon and he became ex-Mormon. He left the church. He knows what it's like to have your beliefs all like shifted drastically. For me, it's my first rodeo. So it's very hard. Cognitive dissonance is basically like, imagine all of society gaslighting you, including your friends and family, because something isn't working or meshing with the reality we are told through the media and culture exists. And yeah, I had to like, I was having a real cognitive dissonance moment where it was very difficult. But he and I were staying in this Logan Square apartment, and at this point I was walking around with him, asking him to talk to who was an agent. He was really good at, they're called service people actually, picking out a service person. And remember I said Chicago's the second most surveilled city in the world. Well, there are plenty of service people all over the city at all times, and summer, peak. It's normal for a bunch of people to be around. So people are not specifically for him, but everyone that is already there knows him and that there is some, directive to be gang stalking him. So I have countless interaction with people that look like homeless people that we come up to, and they're like, yeah, we've been following him. I see he's been smoking a lot lately. And there was a man that, like, it wasn't just homeless people, it was people that looked like working professionals, yo pros, out and about. And it was ridiculous at times. Like, there was one guy that was stationed around Logan Square that looked like a normal dude, and all the friends that had experienced the Baha'i Temple incident, we all were in the same place, and we kind of were on this adventure together because it was exciting as well as fucking weird, where we saw the same guy and we were like, let's look out the window at him, and he would walk in front of our house and then go to one of their home bases where they can change or do God knows what, and he'd come back in a full regalia of fishing gear with a fishing pole. It's trolling. A guy on a bike would be going right at me and then go to the side, and I was like, are you gonna run into me? What the fuck, dude? We would just have a lot of people around us all the time, and more so than you'd ever have people around you, even in the city, to the point where you understand that it's something weird. And when I was drunk, sometimes I would get bold and have deep philosophical question convos with these service people, being like, why him? What are you doing? And he's like, one guy was just like, I don't know, I'm just told to, this is my job, and I got this job out of college, I don't know what else to do. One guy threw a beer can at me from the L station above, and Christopher was like, that's against their rules, they're not allowed to do that. And we walk down the street to a bar where people are lined up outside the bar, and he picks out the person who's a service person, and he goes up to him and he's like, the guys threw a beer can at her, isn't that not allowed? And he was like, oh, sorry, that isn't allowed, sorry they did that to you. And this is just random people we're going up to in the street. So there's some people that are experiencing things, but Christopher gets it really bad. The brunt of it is focused on him. So he is kind of letting them do what they're trying to do, which is freak him out, and they kind of make him try to leave town. He's like, it's too hot here, I can't handle it anymore, they're driving me mad. And he couldn't stay at his apartment anymore, and we had just been dating for a few weeks, so I was like, you can stay with me. But after a couple weeks, and after my, awesome roommate who's another S.A.I.C student, we're known for our great personalities and, human beingness, just kidding, everyone's satanic as fuck there, had called the cops on him because she thought he was weird and that his weed pipe was a crack pipe. So he was like, I was kind of like, you can't really stay at my house anymore, my roommate's crazy. So he was like, I'm just gonna get out of town. So he buys a train ticket, and the train ticket, and this is the kind of shit that the reason this shit was so hard to believe was because of how much budget and attention it would require, and people have low self-esteem, and they're like, why would I be worth this much? How is this possible? But, he got a ticket, and once he bought the ticket, they routed him to a different place on the train. He got onto a train that was actually going to a full-on FBI town. If you know about those, everyone who lives in those towns works for the government. So he went to a hot spot where it was trying to drive him mad, really. And he had a horrible time there, no surprise. And he left and came back to Chicago. And I was like, at this point, what do I do? It was hard for me to sorry, I'm really dark right now, it's kind of shitty, but I was like, here we go, I wanted to help him, and it was getting really bad for him. It was effective, he was kind of losing it. And so I remember I called the school because, being the dumb hoe that I was, I did not understand how deep everything went, and that no one would believe me or be able to even. So I called the school, and a guidance counselor, or the kind of shrinky guy, the cop basically, I told him what was happening, and he told me, he was like, you should call the cops on your boyfriend when he comes back to the apartment. And I was like, wait, what? No, I'm telling you that he's being harassed and that it's the FBI, and you're telling me to call the cops on him? He was like, he's dangerous, you should call the cops on him. Christopher wasn't dangerous. He was just getting fucked with, including his stuff, his bank account, his housing, and his day-to-day life. So that's how that went. And I told my mom things, and she was like, oh my god, honey, just come home for a little while, take a break, leave town. So I left town, and when I went home, my mom had set up a conference call with this same guidance counselor from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. And on the call, we describe what's happening. My mom is pretty bad at having her own frame, so she just kind of believes the most authoritative voice in the room. And in our relationship, a lot of the time that's me, but then you bring in someone who's a professional from the School of the Art Institute, and she's just ready to eat up whatever he says. So he's on the phone with us, and he's like, well, I called the FBI, and they told me they just don't do that sort of thing, so it must not be real. And my mom was like, okay, honey, well, sir, my daughter has been talking to agents on the street who are telling her that this is happening, and it's, they've done a lot of research, they're telling me, into this, that it is in fact things that happen. And he was like, no, it's not. So that was kind of the end of it. I was a cuck too, so I was like, well, I'm not going to talk about this to anyone really, because nothing happens. I was real naive in the beginning, being like, I'm gonna write an expose, I'm gonna write a book, I'm gonna make a comic about this, I'm gonna go to the ACLU. We went to the ACLU, actually, Christopher and I, when we were still kind of on that tip of like, maybe we could do something. And he calls the ACLU first, and some person intercepts the call, which was happening in multiple ways with texts and calls with Christopher and other people. But the call is intercepted, and someone who answers it is clearly not someone who works at the ACLU, and they're like, no, if you came over here, that wouldn't work. Like, we just work on gay marriage. Like, they were just saying that. And we went to the office of the ACLU in downtown Chicago, and we go in, and I'm like behind my boyfriend, who I'm worried about looking crazy with, and he tells them that he had that phone call, and they were like, no one here talks like that or says that when someone calls us. That's really weird. But nothing came of it, and we like left the office. They were like, we can't do anything. Like, we have no way to like know about what you're talking about or anything. I don't even remember what they said, to be honest. But so I come back, and it's like, it's getting to be the end of the summer, and we're just living in that reality. Things start to die down a little bit, and Christopher has gotten really good at recognizing who service people are. So the service people that are always out anyways, they just do like little peace signs to each other, like, recognize. One woman who looks homeless is like, yeah, I deal with the puppies and the kitties. Like, they have like weird lingo too, like, I deal with, I'm on the ground for trafficking, like kids, boys and girls. But yeah, that whole summer, and this is one part I want to go into that I haven't mentioned either before. Teresa, my friend, freshman roommate, she has the only other really major interaction with the service people besides me and Christopher and our group on the Baha'i Temple Day, where she is also into just like wandering around and getting into trouble. So she finds a couple that are either playing a couple or whatever, who she talks to, and they're like, we're gonna take you and get you some tacos, and they like bring her into a taqueria, and they kind of intimidate her, and they're like having dinner with her, but also being like, yeah, you know what, like the army, imagine being a soldier, and like, you gotta do what's right for your country, even if it doesn't seem right. And I don't know what the hell they were saying, like, but she just came to me after and was like, I just had the craziest experience with these service people. And to be honest, some of the experiences back then are still so wide-reaching and like large that it's really hard to imagine all that attention and budget aimed on one person. But before I end part 3, I want to give a little background on like Christopher, which is that he came from a Mormon family. His family was relatively well respected in the church, I believe. His dad was a mailman, but they had a really nice house, and I visited them, and Christopher had been hospitalized as a teen, a late teen, maybe early 20s, for a manic break because he had BPD. He had bipolar disorder. And he was hospitalized by the state. And he had been doing a lot of research trying to figure out why this was happening to him. And there are so many layers because, like all good military intelligence programs, they kill multiple birds with one stone. But when we had this all said and done, we figured, there were reasons of, one, anyone who's been on a mental, I don't know what they call it, 552, anyone who's been put in mental hospital, that's a state-run hospital, gets put on a list where you've basically signed over your rights to be experimented on. And he also had been doing cult shit and was already in the School of the Art Institute of Chicago that's completely keeping tabs on people, and you know, you're in a hot spot. And basically the people who had been talking to him, that he'd been trying to figure out, the actual service people on the ground, were saying that it started as something, but then no one ever acknowledges them, or like no one ever does what he did, that they started using him for training. This is what they were saying. And you don't know what's real or not, so it's very hard to piece everything together, but that was another thing that was happening. Saying like, you know, this has now become a training exercise, or they've just been doing this for other reasons. And I had not been down any rabbit holes until this time, so I had not a lot of background about military intelligence, and I was kind of going in blind, and like the normal people in the world that don't have experiences or something to bring them to understanding or knowledge or truth, I didn't do much of my own research, and I didn't spend a lot of time consuming content and finding things out. I just was on my track at school. I was in my pipeline that made me sure that my energy was in a respected, approved source and place for my track in life, to serve fucking Satan, you know? So, that's just some context. There will be more context later on in the story about further reasons why this all happened. And, this will end when I'm going into my junior year, kind of after the overt gang stalking subsides. And, Christopher and I, he's graduated, I'm still finishing up my last 2 years. So, make a wash, cash.me/$washitall, paypal.me/washitall. My goal today is 480, and I have a ways to go. So don't shop on Black Friday. Don't do